So let's talk about HU8a Into the Pit 1 Avernus. A equals 1. This is to be a 9-part series by Anthony Huso on the 9 Hells. This is, let's call this a preview rather than a review. These were provided to me free by Tony as his new release, and he wanted some extra eyes on them and so on. And so, I won't give a sort of, this is all my detailed thoughts. We'll look at it together. I'll give a few thoughts, I guess, and just give you a sense of what kind of product it is. These are out now, if you are interested. Are available via the bluebard.com. His Gumroad is where you can get the PDFs, and his Lulu is where you can get them printed. So yeah, let's go. The cover, by the way, in the PDF has dropped to the back. It's very, very colourful. I think a lot of the material in this one, I haven't actually read HU7 Cast of the Soul Prince. I haven't had the specific kind of wherewithal to get together and buy it and read it. But a lot of this material, I think, was in that originally, because the campaign there can end up engaging with the Hells and Avernus particularly. And so the stuff about and that's something which is a somewhat sequel to material in HU6 Dreamhouse the Nether Prince, where you go, you have a whole section at the front of the Enchiridion on demons and the abyss, and basically rules to do planar travel. And he did the same with Fabled City of Brass, which is set on the Plane of Fire, and HU8a Fall, which is set less so. He gives less extra stuff there, but set on the astral. So Tony is interested in planar stuff, including at low levels for HU8a Fall, but particularly at high levels. This is what Gary never quite got to. You see it with the failed, written largely by someone else, Q1, for instance, and you see it with him playing a bit with kind of what he would do with higher level play, but certainly something that happened a bit and was in his own games, and you could see was certainly on his mind toward the end of his time at TSR, and even before that. By toward the end of the time, I really mean like 1981 or so, he was thinking about planar travel, a place where you can have these big expansive challenges that challenge these high level characters in new ways, because you start to break. A big thing is that planes let you twist the rules, and I should say I do have a group on the planes at the moment in my big campaign, my long running campaign, and I have a playtest group playing through an adventure of my own on the planes. So I see that. You see the kind of cool stuff about being able to be like, oh, this rule is a bit different. And yeah, so anyway, that's part of what's going on here. Is you've got a lot of details in the appendices. You see the overview of Hell through to Avernus restrictions. Of a 9. One reason, by the way, I'm doing these 3 different separately. The 3 that he has put out is because they're 92-page documents. They're not short. But yeah, you've got over. You've got a quarter or something of the book is just about Hell and rules for the Hells, and it's very thematic. And we'll talk about that. I think organisationally, just as one note, and this is partly because they've been released separately. The first 3 have been released as separate documents, and the other 6, as he finishes them, will be. Is that I could immediately think, okay, I just want all the rules at the front like they were in Dreamhouse, and when there's stuff in the other 2, so the River Styx, for instance, is in Stygia. I'm like, I want that all in a separate book within the series. But yes, anyway, this is how it is. This gives you your basic rules, and then up here you have 2 things. You have a general, 2.5 things. So you've got a general kind of like, you're going around Avernus, this is how you travel around Avernus and the Hells, and here's an encounter table. And the encounter table gives you a lot of extra material in terms of saying, okay, these are people you're going to meet, these are things, these are the plots going on. Then there are cave maps, which are, and we can, I'm sure, look at a sample of them. Cave maps like in D1 to 3, where Gygax is like, here's a bunch of caves and corridors and stuff. So when you get random encounters, you can have a location, you can rotate it, you can combine it with a different one, which is one of the great innovations in inverted commas, in module design, and this copies that for, look, you need a place for there to be an extra kind of encounter or a mini dungeon or whatever. Use these. And then there is an actual adventure, which I think is set for 5th level plus, is really higher level than that in terms of idea. But lots of challenges are intellect based, player skill based, and so you can get away with it at lower levels if you understand your limitations. But really, it's probably a bit higher level than that for an ideal minimum. Some 7th to 9th, maybe. But yes, so yeah, this is what you get. You get an enormous amount of material, and that's my first observation is, and I've enjoyed these, and I think this is very good. But that's the biggest thing is you're getting a lot of material in here. You're getting rules for a whole set of subplanes. Nine planes of hell. And you're getting a smallish adventure. It's kind of small, medium dungeon. I think it's 26 areas or something. So very much at the kind of, this is a small but substantial thing. And you're getting the sort of travel and encounter rules for Avernus itself. And yeah, the more or less, because we'll look through it and get some sense of what's going on in it, and I'll offer a few more comments. More or less the only substantive criticism up front, and more or less anything I have to say overall, I should say, negatively, is organisationally. I say, one, I'm a bit like, oh man, I want the rules at the front, but also there's some stuff where I'm not sure if it's I've had to read it a couple of times to get it, or I'm like, I need to go back and read that again to really understand a particular connection between two sections of rules. There's obviously there's so much of it. It's and I think that sometimes the unwieldiness of when you have a lot of good material, even it doesn't need to be bad material, it can be good material. Getting it to relate to each other and refer to each other clearly is, something you're going to have to read this twice sometimes, I think, to really understand how to run your game here. You can't read it once and then sit at the table and be like, well, I probably know everything in there. You will not. So, there is, by the way, you can see there's a 0 to 10 scale of Avernus organisation and stability. Now, Avernus is the chaotic hell, is the point here. This is heavily inspired by Ed Greenwood's articles in Dragon 75 and 91 on the hells. And it refers to those, and you will find getting a PDF of those useful. But the point here is that Tiamat is allowed to rule over this, and Tiamat is both the ruler of a plane of hell, but is also functionally demonic in origin. And so there is this kind of odd thing going on here. It's one thing here is you don't have a canonical blood war. There's he mentions blood war, which he didn't like. The supplement, not the concept, but there's no blood war, and so you're looking at this kind of late first edition D&D, AD&D hells, heavily inspired by Greenwood, but trying to make it very playable. Because Ed wrote much good material at the time, but in his dragon stuff, his monsters are very usable. His articles are often interesting, but you've really got to think, well, how am I going to turn this into something? And yeah, so there's just some very cool stuff, and this is stuff where, again, the organisation belies it because you kind of need to know what's going on here. But the big thing here is the agony of Avernus sound. The 9 hells each have an agony. This is as well as the kind of meta rules of all the hells, which is, stuff to do with you can't turn undead, generally speaking. Devils are bound by contracts, and that's they're bound by contracts anywhere, but they have to be there, and they can only escape in certain ways. You can't sleep without something called nepenthe. Respite, which is respite from the agonies of the hells, is what every devil is constantly trying to get, and is the main currency. Either everything is respite itself, or is there to trade for respite. Respite, capital R. So there's all these kind of meta concepts, and that is just everything in the hells. And there's also stuff to do with devil talismans, which are like demonic amulets, but the talisman is a glyph rather than like an actual item, so the glyph can be put in multiple places. This is all stuff in the back half. There's a galaxy brain element of you need to be willing to engage with a bunch of rules, and you're going to personally at your table, you might be like, I won't do that. I don't get it, or I don't like it. But there's all this kind of meta. how to run hell stuff. And then Avernus is one iteration of that. Stygia and Minoris are different and have different environments, and they have different agonies. And so the agony of Avernus, just to give you one, is PC Dex is limited to 10, magic can circumvent. It's always reduced to 10 on this plane. Gaunt's dexterity would still elevate it to 12. So, which it matters in terms of he is happy to use a d6 under skill system. So 3d6 for an easy check, or easy to moderate, 5d6 for a difficult check. So increasing your dex, much like with non-weapon proficiencies in second edition, still matters for certain skill use, basically. -2 penalty to all die rolls, with a minimum of 1 for damage rolls. Even deaf creatures or creatures without hearing suffer the vibrations. Nothing but respite can prevent the agonies of hell. So it's not just the devils who need the respite, it's also the PCs. Now, you're not here to get respite. Like, it's not like you just come here to suffer and then get respite. The devils have to be here. You do not have to be here. But you're here to do something else. Maybe you're trapped here. Maybe you've been sent here on a mission. Maybe you want to explore the planes. You're high-level adventurers and you're trying to explore. You're going to want respite, because otherwise you're going to suck. I mean, the -2 penalty is actually slightly less bad if you're like 11th or 12th level, or something, as an example, and you're rolling to hit. I just immediately thinking that I look on the tables for the equivalent, but in THACO terms, if you're essentially base +9 or 10, you're then suddenly at +7 or +8. It's not that bad. In terms of what your level is giving you, plus your strength is not reduced, so your melee attacks are not damaged, nor are your thrown, like javelins, nor your thrown attacks. But your missile attacks, your AC, certain skill usages, things like that, and your thief skills are all affected negatively by the dex penalty, more than by the -2. -2, I guess, is minus 10% for percentile rolls. It says all die rolls after all. But unless it's -2%, I don't know. But yeah, it also hits damage rolls based on the die type. Anyway, too much detail there. But the point you get is that this is quite an impactful limited rule, but it suddenly also engages you in the economy of the place, and the fact that devils are always trying to make contracts for respite, and for other things. In fact, there's not just kind of various forms of respite, and in classic Anthony Huso fashion, all these weird, wild currencies, weird fantasy currencies, but in this case, all of which are about giving you respite, but also it's a major part of the contract system within Deviltry, and it can affect deals with mortals too. Why do devils want to go to the prime? Why do they want to keep making deals? Why might they make fairly generous deals? Well, because it will. If the longer they can stay out, the better. Even though they are limited by rank as to how many days they can have out of hell per year, and there's rules for that too. But they also make deals inside Deviltry to, like, oh well, I'm a more powerful devil and I'll give you more power and you'll be promoted if you take this much agony for me. So essentially you drive people, you torture your underlings, but the underling, much like in the corporate world, the underling takes the pain. You're like working in the bank in the pointless middle management job, so they can get higher up to something more interesting or something more powerful or something higher earning. You get the idea. Anyway, there's a travel system based on familiarity. This actually, I think, repeated at the back. But the idea here is you're not, because this is an infinite plane, how do you cope with the fact that you're like, and this is a problem with planar imaginings, that if it's infinite, it almost, stuff feels like it often doesn't mean much. Like, how do you get detail into that? How do you get granularity? How do you get density of concept and of adventure? Oh, well, you'd have to travel a bajillion miles off to go and find the secret citadel. Is not a particularly exciting concept, but here it's actually almost a speed of thought thing. Like, how well do you know the place? That's how many hours it takes. So short trip, medium trip, long trip. He also gives you a bunch of other trip procedures. So there's the trip procedure to do with checking how many things you have to, how many different types of checks you have to make, route generalities just to say, oh, well, this is the kind of place it is. So just very basic stuff in a way, but just to say, and this is much more than you get in plenty of supplements about the planes. And I'm thinking I use actual planescape supplements in my games because I'm happy to do the digestion and regurgitation into something more nourishing for my players. But the problem with those is that you're often dealing with like incredibly overwritten stuff, pages and pages of material for just a couple of really good ideas. The rule sections tend to be better, I should say, for whatever reason. But a lot of the other stuff about the play and basically the gazetteer stuff and the adventure material just tends to be like it could just be crunched down a lot. Or better yet, use the same word count for this kind of detail. You get a bunch of stuff about how to actually travel around this place because that's. And what I should say, this is an aside, but it's a worthwhile aside in the context in the general discussion of writing modules. Procedures very rarely are procedures unhelpful to DMs, at least intelligently put together procedures. You could say, oh, well, DMs want good material, they want good stories, they want good concepts, and some DMs will say, oh, I just want concepts, I've got my own system, I've been working on it for 20 years. Sure, but generally speaking, for most of us, I think procedures that have content in them can be mined for the content. Whereas the content on its own, you need to invent the procedure for. And procedures also allow you to do stuff quickly based on you having read the rules. It's like reading a war game or whatever, or as well, to play ASL, you need to read the first chapter at least. But once you've got that, you have things that help run everything else. So I'll say in general, I have not used these yet. I haven't had a group on Avernus since I got this. I've only had a group on Avernus once, but I will use it next time and we'll see. But certainly this is all stuff similar to other systems I've used and other procedures. Hazards with different things that can happen, gates, sinkholes, toxic mists. There's an encounter table, and you roll on it, whatever it is, and it has the various entries it has, and there's just normal devils of every kind, pretty much, and then there's banished lords and exiled knights. Is that it, or exiled dukes, or something like that? These are, as you can see, Dragon 91 things, and the concept here is, that you get the Ed Greenwood characters. His Dagon, Azazel, and Astaroth, and you can meet them or something. So, as an example, Azazel wants the PCs. His arrival produces thunder in a crater below his feet. Azazel doesn't like Tiamat, but then is saying, "Oh, go and kill, or go and offer appeasement to this ancient black dragon, Tiamat's consort." Then Braghestar. This is a trick that's then hurting Tiamat in their reproduction. And Tiamat will be unable to produce eggs for 1 year. PCs have to sign a contract, and Azazel will then ally with them in the future. You can, of course, fight Azazel for his chains and jewels worth 7 million crowns, which I think is Anthony's silver GP system, or whatever. Like it's his part of his complex, his own monetary system. Basically, I think that is GP value. Correct me in the comments if someone knows better. He also has a flask and a Nepenthe, 2 7-hour Sanita absolution charms, 3 succulent medallions of myth. Medallions of myth, I think, are like, I'm not sure if they're mortal or upper planes creatures' brains, kind of cut into medallions. I think they're mortal brains. He'll offer the Nepenthe and the charms in exchange for you going and doing this kind of dangerous but potentially fairly straightforward mission. You've got to travel there, though, so of course you're then adding in, and you're travelling under all these challenges. So it's not like, here's a quest giver, and then here's the encounter you have to have written down. It is like, here's the quest giver, here's the offer, here's the conditions, you have to do a contract, he'll hunt you down if you betray him. Here's the rewards, and then what is the challenge? Well, one, you have a kind of capsule of a meeting you're going to have. So, theoretically, this may not be too difficult, but you have to travel there, and that means you're under the fact that you can't sleep. So, which, by the way, means you can't recover spells until you get Nepenthe, as here. You can't yeah, you're going to get exhausted and you lose levels once you're exhausted. So he has rules for exhaustion here. You can use your own rules for exhaustion. These are arguably, because it's that once you're exhausted, your level halves, and then if after the period of exhaustion has expired, you've not sorted that, you lose all your levels, you become 0 level. Arguably, they're harsher than saying something like Wilderness Survival Guide. They're not bad. I just mean, like, I observe. A lot of the plot here, and this is one thing that, in terms of the organizational stuff, I could have had explained up front at the top in really easy terms, like, and there's some of the stuff at the top, but like, Astroth escaped. This is part of the Ed Greenwood stuff. Asmodeus hates him for this. Astroth's friends were killed by Asmodeus, but maybe they're not dead. And the Sundered Tower is an old base of Astroth on Avernus. And so the idea is that, that's that's the adventure site. So you have this whole thing where you're interacting with Astroth and Asmodeus's agents, including though he's not an agent, including potentially Asmodeus's potential son, and you're dealing with Tiamat. All these massive players. This is actually really cool. The fact that you could be 5th level. As I say, I wouldn't go there if I was you at 5th level, at least if that is the highest level in the party. But you're like 9th or 10th level. Even you're not super high level, you're just hitting that kind of threshold, and you go here and you're suddenly dealing with these major players. And the economy of hell and the tactics of hell make this viable. This is interesting. It makes it a friendlier environment, let us say, than the Abyss. Because the Abyss is pure violence and pure chaos. It's all about might makes right here. Well, look, Azazel, who is a banished lord, is going to turn up. He's going to be like, look, I just need you to do me a favour that isn't necessarily even immediately is not dangerous to you. Tiamat may never find out. I will be your friend in the future, and it's not like the contract is, oh, you'll give me your soul. That might be what happens, but petitioner-wise, that's based on alignment. If you just do contracts that you can have the best of intentions here, don't worry. And that allows you to survive at moderate levels and do stuff, albeit with these other challenges. But then, hey, you need some nepenthe so you can sleep. You need access to some respite so you can fight, because you're about to go and do a battle. And with something you can deal with, you're 9th, 10th level, and you're like, okay, we've got the magic weapons, we've got the magic. So you've got your nepenthe from one deal, you've got your respite from another, so that you can get rid of the dex penalties and stuff, and the -2 to all rolls penalty. So great, that's all really good, but you're having to make all these deals, this complex network, and that is really what the fact that the encounter section. And I'll give one other example of a thing I like about the encounter section. I think is good, but just to give you a sense of what is going on as well. But it's so much of this is an NPC catalogue with who are giving missions. On the opposite side, Amdusius asks if the PCs have seen a Snow White woman accompanied by undead. He is looking to kill her. That is the outcast knight Dusker. Or the great wolf Amdusius growls, "Primes, what brings you such stout-hearted guests to my queen's realm?" And he will offer them a contract to take Tiamat's egg to be hatched on the Prime. If it's a party of good PCs, the contract is to imprison one of Asmodeus' assassins in an iron flask. So, surely that's good. You're good. I'm offering you a good contract. And yeah, you as the DM then have to, I should say, in terms of detail, they're not giving you loads of. He's not giving you tons of extra detail here to be like, okay, well, this is how to run the adventure. He gives you a whole adventure site. You cannot complain. He has allowed you to populate an entire layer of hell. But the idea here is you've got all these NPCs that give you all these different kinds of things. Astroth is pointing you towards the Sundered Tower, obviously, to go and find if his friend has come back. So, as examples, Astroth somehow kind of is communicating back to you and gets you to go and look at the main adventure location. Azazel just wants, and Azazel can be a patron in the future, but Azazel just wants you to, and Astroth also wants to work in the future. Azazel just wants you to go and just give these stench cows to the Black Dragon. And Amdusius either, and you can pick. I think, and this is an example with lots of generic devils. The point is that it's like a list of potential setups that you could even roll on D4, D6. Here you pick. Say for Amdusius, is he looking for Dusker, or does he challenge you and then give you an offer? If you're not good, hey, it'll be a kind of pretty evil thing. If you are good, then it's something good. You want to get rid of one of Asmodeus' assassins, right? You know. Here's the thing: Amdusius is loyal to Tiamat, not Asmodeus, and so there's a kind of dynamic there where you're like, "Ooh, which side of the politics am I getting in on?" Let's so Barb Devil. You've got a D4 table here, basically, haven't you? You've So sometimes free agents looking for opportunities, check infernal encounter reactions, then roll or select setup. They're melting shots, coins of mirage, and black spoons. They're used syringes of strange glass that flex proboscis-like, drinking the molten metal in with moth mouth delicacy, then injecting it into their grey-green arms. The Devil's Sigh, savouring their brief respite. If encounter reaction is positive, one is a vendor with standard chances for trinkets. Trinkets don't have respite, so they're kind of pretty tradable. But they might make you immune to vernal fireballs, for instance. They're smoking Serenity brands and smiling. One of them, however, misses his sanity check. I should address this actually very briefly in a second and goes paranoid. They're selling Mithra inflated 680 per medallion. They have 7 medallions available. They'll attempt to entice good PCs to try the delicacy. Remember, it's brains. The Devil proposes a bet. They ask the party where they're going and basically they want to race. And hey, look, you can take my agony for one out. We'll trade Traditor Charms, agony charms, basically, if I win. But of course, it's a fixed bet because he will know the location, and so because it's speed of thought, he will get there quicker. And then you get, this is just very cool. Loads of encounter stuff. One thing here is you could just steal this in general. This is most useful, obviously, to do with Avernus. All of these have to do with either Avernal infernal goods or infernal travel system. So yeah, you could say it's not as useful on the Prime, but the concept and the principle and the way they act is stuff you can steal. And certainly, even if you're like, I don't really want to have all the stuff going on that's here, I can imagine you stealing this for your own use on the plane, on the Hells. There's Tiamat on the left. You can see. So yes, it's you've got both the kind of dynamics of the lords and knights and stuff like that, and all these named NPCs with motivations and the way they connect into the kind of major adventure material. But you also have just common and garden devils who are doing things, and you have stuff like, someone's like herding a bunch of undead around, or there's I think it's Rakshasas and they've got a caravan. They are just taking stuff to trade somewhere. So you've got functionally just devils working or infernal creatures on their normal business, and you've got stuff to deal with all about the kind of the currency in this case for the Barb Devils, and you've got the named NPCs both dragged into the politics, and they kind of give you specific quests, which could just be quite fun. Let's what we'll do now. Let's go back. So yeah, we've gone through. You can see, by the way, trinket the encounter setups on table 8 all the way through to 41. So you've got over 30 pages of encounters. That is a third of the book. That's really the bulk of the book. It's longer than the Sundered Tower. No, technically the Sundered Tower is it is. It's longer than the Sundered Tower. The Sundered Tower is 25 pages. Let's have a look at some Avernal caves. Here's zombies. You can see there could just be tons of zombies and they can't be turned. Unturnable, yeah. So yeah, you can see here's your maps for use. I mean, and in a sense, anyone can come up with these, of course. But the whole point is, you didn't, did you? And you can just use these instead. You've got various. This is a small gazetteer. There are some. The dirigibles, the fact that you have like devils sometimes tossing it. There's an encounter, I forget the exact thing, where they're like tossing some bait off the dirigible just to screw with you, which is great. So the Sundered Tower, 6 characters of at least 5th level. As I say, I think really you want your average level to be a great deal higher than 5th. As with just general experience of playing stable play in AD&D, it may well be you've got a bunch of 9th and 10th level players, PCs, and they've got a 6th level friend. That's not a plus potentially a couple of henchmen who are even lower levels. That survivability can become an issue. You've got to have weapons to fight devils, but assume you might have 6 to 8 characters who are averaging 8th or 9th level, and you look at say then the point is stuff like this becomes survivable as long as you're smart. If you are all 15th level, then you still need to be smart because some of this stuff is insta kill. But the point is that you have a bit more resilience to that. Okay, you can see. So you've got a map here. As I say, it's not massive. It's 26 rooms, I think. Yep. And it has just, as a general note, it obviously has a few routes through a few options each way. It's been loopy doopied, but it's not meant to be a record-breakingly complex environment at that level. The biggest gimmick here is these RB and PB things, which is basically they are two-way portals, which are on one side either purple or red, the other side they're black. And essentially, passing through them on the chromatic side, if you want to put it that way, runs the risk of you being destroyed or other stuff happening to you. You've got running through from the black is much lower risk. So you can see, for instance, here coming around this way, B to R is safer than R to B here. If you can just go all the way way around in some cases, but there will sometimes be environmental factors that make the portals tempting. Yeah, and for instance, here you can see there are doors, but there's also portals, and players are curious here. This is the only way through there. That is a secret door. So to get through to this room here, either you've got to find a secret door or take a portal. You get to step through the portal. You get the general idea. This is it's a very, very Huso kind of adventure environment. In terms of he is a bit into his kind of baroque metal tones, and you can see this if you want to see. I mean, that is, I think, probably meant to be Astaroth, whose former home this is. There's the Thunder Tower, and basically, the upper levels are gone, but you can still explore the kind of main lower level. But yes, this is the aesthetic. Look, there's some kind of skeletal devil or undead at the serving a great goat with burning black candles. That's one thing in terms of when you're trying to get your way around. There's also this kind of mini game of getting candles of Astaroth, which negate gates also or defeat enemies. So there's things that are going to. Well, how do you make an adventure challenging for a 15th level character or a party of it? And we're assuming here not just played by noobs, we're assuming here played by players who have played this game a lot. Well, you have to challenge not their character sheet on its own, like, oh, I'll just roll more dice and I guess we'll see if you win. The combat has to be challenging, and you see that. You just go and look at. I did this with a group, with one of my groups at one point. We just looked at Demogorgon's first edition stat line, and we're like, how do you deal with this? What's your strategy? You can do that. The combat has to matter, but you have to challenge the brains. The fact that the environmental challenges are things which slow players and which they can't be just pass walling through. You can, intentionally, you can see that. In some cases, you can't just very easily spell your way through. You can use spells to do stuff, but you can see there are generally rules here. Magical lights are all kind of reduced in intensity, for instance, you could. So generally speaking, there are some restrictions, there are some limitations. You're also still under all those problems you have normally in adversity with dice rolls and dexterity. And then you're looking through. There's a hell cinder. The hell cinder can be used as a light. We'll look at a couple more here. There's a bunch of treasure, and there's a bunch of. You also have social interactions where you have to be answering the right kind of thing. You have to know the characters and the background. You need to learn about the environment, potentially to make the right decisions. And so there's a sort of. It's a choice and consequence thing, right? It's not just I'll roll dice. You both have to. Use your intellect to be, okay, we're getting these candles, there's these portals, do we use them here? Okay, there's these enemies who can be negated, maybe there's clues in the environment to say maybe we can negate the enemy using this candle, but you also need to find the candles, there's ways to get candles, so there's all that kind of soft puzzle gaming, let's call it. Mostly here, I should say, there are things like shadows, and shadows are nasty, and especially because they're unturnable, even when you're mid to high level. Dire harpies attacking you with a scream, which basically stuns you for a round. They can drop their crap on you. They can attack you. They destroy your gear. All exposed gear. So yeah, you'll get your magic gear gets its save bonus from its pluses, but they're just like burning all your stuff. One a day they can cast Stone Skim. They their damage they have it's only a few attacks, sure, but they are Thaco 12. So the point is that we're talking about creatures which, even for your high level party, and you may only be mid level, you might have you might be like average level 7th because you've gone here quite early, and for some reason you've survived to this point. These are going to be really challenging even for the high ones. But the point is, it's not mostly about that. That's a bit of the spice. It's the fact that you have all these other components as well, like the candle puzzles, finding the right things. You're getting handouts with clues on them. You've got message to Beheret, again because he might come back. You get some spells. Astral Spell. Astral Spell is good because I think if memory serves, Astral Spell actually works to get you out of the hells, because there's a whole thing about getting into the hells is reasonably easy, and getting down tends to be semi-easy. Getting up tends to be a lot harder. Getting out tends to be a lot harder, and you can only get to the astral directly from Avernus, so you can't. And you can gate or portal elsewhere, but you can't just astral out. So Astral Spell is great in Avernus, not a helpful blow, but it's amazing. You're just getting access. It is a thing where he's thinking, how will I make sure the PCs have potential access to a spell they might need? You can see all these kinds of things. You can get a sense of what's going on there. I think this is great. At first glance, it's very much in the tone of his other adventures. I've run several of his adventures in different ways, and I think there's a good mixture of challenge. It's not a massive environment, and it's not. The point is, it's not Dreamhouse of the Nether Prince. It's not Orcus's summer home with like many levels. It is a single enclosed environment to do with a particular, and it has a really interesting, fun payoff, but a particular mystery and gimmick, and that engages you in the politics of hell and may continue to. And that's what it is. And it does that quite well within the remit of being a small environment. There's a bunch of other rules. We'll briefly, let's look at one more thing before we finish, just to get you a sense. Here you go. You've got your sources of respite, wafers of grave dust, all the way up to medallions of myth, lava, which are formed differently here to in the abyss per his lore. Lava doesn't give it, but because there's so much magical potential in it, it's the most valuable thing. And the point is, you can buy nearly 10 medallions of brain. Absolution charms, the Sin Eaters, the Trouters, and the Sacrificati are the you suffer agony for me things. That's a different form of respite, basically. And Nepenthe, which is flowers on the sticks. Cool bit of lore. The Styx isn't evil. The Styx is just polluted by all the stuff that goes into it. The Styx is a sentient kind of planar entity that's the daughter of Oceanus. I liked that. And you can just imagine, that kind of makes your mind go, doesn't it, as a DM? What could I design around that? But Nepenthe, you can see the description here on the left. But Nepenthe is going to be really valuable for PCs. So PCs are going to have to get into this economy if they're going to stay in the hells for any amount of time. Yeah, you can do a day of not very much adventuring, but just doing a quick job and taking the risk of having -2 to your rolls. But you're here for any amount of time. You need Nepenthe so that you don't suffer exhaustion and you can get back spells. And the more adventures you accept, maybe not going to see that Black Dragon, but even the travel to the Black Dragon is dangerous. But let alone going to find and capture one of Asmodeus' assassins, you need to not be suffering from the base penalties of the agonies of Avernus. And I guess as I look at the other two, we'll touch on those as well to kind of talk about how they interact. But even Avernus, where it's just it's the dex penalty and the die penalty, you can see, okay, you're going to have to get into this. And though it is baroque and semi-complicated, it's not super complicated. This section, stuff like glyphs and summoning devils and dealing with devils, is more in depth, but also somewhat intuitive. And you have to bear in mind that there are penalties for breaking contracts there, and devils react in particular ways, etc. But here, this stuff, while perhaps less intuitive because it's a whole new currency system, is rich and exciting enough, and you'll play it. I find, players like different stuff. Not every player likes everything, but plenty of players will enjoy the kind of the flavour and tone of this, whilst it's also, and this is the vital thing to do with form and substance combining. Games aren't either form of like the theoretical thing, the gamish thing behind it, or substance, the stuff it's made of, which is, so White Wolf is the substance only, as it were, and not to state a cliche, not necessarily to get into a debate. Form is, all D&D is just chess. Actually, form and substance together are what make a thing. And here you have form and substance. It has the substance of this kind of cool theme, but the point is there is a form that is the physical embodiment of a form, and the form is a very clever set of mechanics to do with drawing players into everything else. So yes, that's Avernus. I'd love to hear what you think. My basic thoughts, as I've kind of said, I think there's some organisational issues. I think the adventure is really good. I think it's really fun, and it doesn't need to be more, given what the supplement is allowing you to run it. It's giving you a detailed adventure, which none of these Planescape books, the planar boxes, do not do that. At the same time, there's a limitation on it. But much more positively, the detailing of the plane and the ability to just run stuff in the plane with travel rules, and the general idea of the hells with their agonies and the general problems with that and the cures to that, which we've talked about here, as well as the contractual system with the devils, is all such incredible work that it makes the hells fully gameable, and much more than the DM's Guide to the Planes or Planes of Lore for Planescape do, which have some usable rules. But this isn't just, there's some usable rules that give you an overview of stuff. This is like detailed encounter stuff, detailed travel stuff, and much more detailed rules to allow you to be like, yes, actually, this is what's going on in the world, and this is how you're going to survive. And, making it a game. You have to get this stuff to survive. Anyway, do share your thoughts. I will continue with Minoris and Stygia soon. Till next time.